Hello and welcome to another reaction video. This time I'm watching Bricky's Every 40k Faction Explained Part 2. But before we get into that, I've been told I need to watch the Horus Heresy cinematic trailer by a few people, so let's get into that before we get on to the main video. So sit back and enjoy. Oh, this looks awesome already.
I never wanted this. I never wanted to unleash my legions.
Whoa, that voice. Ah, it's Horus.
Together we banished the ignorance of old night.
Oh, his armor looks awesome. Oh,
But you betrayed me.
damn.
You betrayed us all.
Just dragging him.
Stole power from the gods and lied to your sons.
Out of my way, peasant.
Mankind has only one chance to prosper. If you will not seize it, then I will.
Whoa.
So let it be war.
Oh, this is so epic. Oh, makes me wish we had games like this. Maybe 1 year.
From the skies of terror to the galactic rim.
You could just hear the spite. It's just everything's devastated. These shots are epic.
Seas boil. Let the stars fall. Though it takes the last drop of my blood,
Oh dear.
I will see the galaxy freed once more.
Wow.
And if I cannot save it from your
Oh, you
fate,
can just.
Father,
Oh, you can feel that voice and that anger. Oh, that is epic. I can see why so many people want me to watch it. Okay then, I guess it's on to the main video now.
So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we
Yeah.
can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just
Oh,
felt someone grab my ass. Like hard, Nick.
So as I've mentioned
Grab
many
my
times
ass.
before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible, there are demons everywhere, things are crazy, all your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty, it is vast and tiny, it obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are four gods that permeate in chaos and the warp. These are the four major chaos
Yeah,
gods.
we kinda learned
and
these
if
from
we wish to
Luton.
learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard
Yep.
the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne?
Yeah.
That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle.
He does look
doesn't
like an
care
angry
where
guy.
blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you
yeah.
have Tzeentch, and
Whoa.
Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change,
Is that a mouth in
permeates
his
so many different
crotch?
other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes
Uh-oh, you
sense,
say moves
he
the mouth
will
this time.
and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone
like a
while
Cthulhu
also
god or something.
completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. And that question leads to three more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks four answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions, or are you simply giving paths leads to answers and other horse shit. Zeech is just
confusing.
I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the God of Change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle.
Papa Nurgle.
He loves you for who you are. Probably
oh,
not.
that's nice.
He will murder you just the same. But Papa
mind.
Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Zeech do not like each other very much because where Zeech represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large
the
bloat
plague brains.
and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death.
Everything dies at some point, yeah.
All of us will
So that makes
end
sense.
up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot, and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess.
Nice.
Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up. But
okay.
It, whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions. And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain.
I don't know if he's having a good time or not.
Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course, that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything, mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear.
A lot of leather.
Unspeakable excess, the Prince of Pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally refer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you.
Oh, so he likes a fair fight.
Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Zeech generally don't get along because Zeech is that conniving schemer, But he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want. The changer of ways. That is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality and ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end
so
the same.
Tzeentch doesn't like
know
it.
The meaning of life.
Everything
the meaning of life is to live
just
and
ends.
die
He wants
and
it to carry on.
And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, bam style of pleasure, but also everything else, like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight.
Everything you
feeling,
find
emotion
nice
and
in
feeling.
day to day.
All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one.
Yeah, you gotta have a bad guy.
My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a
comment.
Which
Is your favorite Chaos God? I'd like to know why.
Somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him.
Yeah,
so
that
cool.
looks really cool.
So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos demons are generally very melee based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys.
Damn.
Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow. Khorne is super scary in melee. You've got Tzeentch, who are far more into cyclers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh, who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction, with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines.
Oh, okay.
So Horus and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just
it was very fortunate that he managed to corrupt exactly half of the Primarch
into greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus
look much of a
for everyone
demon.
else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I got to write them down. But you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now. And oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like, at least on the tabletop, because the Emperor's Children are not good people. You got
they
the
don't sound
Iron
like
Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the 4. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and are a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead. which is good because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron still alive. Also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron, fucker's mad. You've got Deathguard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models.
Cool.
And look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking.
It's very cool.
Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. Yeah. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon.
Ooh.
Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons.
Ah, yeah, Thousand Sons.
The Nerd. Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell. And they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty
Painting
neat,
those would be
overall, with all of these Chaos
that'd be an
Space
ordeal.
Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos
just respawn.
is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so,
I suppose you can't really kill emotions.
To do so are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So, I promise, we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos.
Nice. The Eldar.
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were as well responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How did they do that?
How did they make a chaos god?
Debauchery on a world-ending scale. So back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more.
I suppose you just get bored and it just gets out of control.
Debauchery!
Debauchery!
When everything you have can be
what?
so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery.
I think that's a little
All
bit
the
past
senses
debauchery.
the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated. And this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing.
Like a warp
and in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved
groups
you
could just
and clans
bypass
that would
the warp.
spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So
God.
all of this continued, and it continued, and it bloated.
Jesus.
Until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose. All of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom. Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold
the Eldar
trillions.
Fucked the god into existence.
Had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi
impressive
gateway
debauchery
portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Kaida. And it is horrifying. So
we still need to learn about Kaida.
She who thirsts
Horny on main.
Eldar slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the Webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. and they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son.
Oh, they're talking about humans.
All my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny.
Damn, that's heavy.
And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier.
That makes sense.
And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery.
Sleek
They
vehicles.
are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry.
Yeah,
they also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said.
Oh, look at the
Not
cool
very
colors.
tanky, generally pretty squishy.
Oh,
hit
look at the
like
huge
trucks
walkers.
and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard,
look
die
really
fast.
agile.
Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
Those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh has them, but it has them on by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off. By doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. Now. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits, and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's Example, let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go.
No.
You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. No. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and just pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you, and do the exact same thing to them.
Not
you
the
yourself
grapes.
Will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand.
Damn, that doesn't sound really good at all.
While you are, of course, still alive and breathing.
That's really messed up.
You will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k.
Yeah, they don't sound very friendly.
And they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesha's grip will get harder,
yeah, they need to keep Slaanesh
will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesha's like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really
Spikes
quick,
everywhere.
speedy, get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. "We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed."
Damn.
Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop it there for now, as these videos are really, really long. But yeah, we learned about Chaos this time, and the Elder factions, or at least some of them. And I learned a lot. Yeah, Bricky does a really good job of explaining it. I look forward to learning about the rest in the next video. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and join me for the next one. So, see you later.